Computer. And it didn't register. Recording in progress. Okay,
there it is.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Tonight's shiur as Leilu Nishmat Avi Mori Dov Ber Meir and Reuven Halevi Imi Marati Rachel Bar Rav Michal, and also tonight's shiur is Leilu Nishmat Jack Kal Yaakov Ben Sion Ben Elchanan Halevi, who unfortunately passed away this week. The family is sitting shiva, and we hope this neshama should have an aliyah, a refuah shlema for all of our cholim and cholod, and Hashem should watch over all of our chayalim and all of the remaining chatufim who are still, unfortunately, not been reunited with Am Yisrael yet. So tonight we're going to be talking about parshat Ekev, which again, Moshe, we're continuing Moshe's farewell address, and we're still really in the introductory portion, or the first portion, where Moshe is still exhorting Am Yisrael very, very simply, please do not repeat the mistakes of the past. Please learn from your mistakes. And we're going to focus on, last week we focused on the first chapter of Kriyat Shema. This week we're going to focus on the second chapter of Kriyat Shema. Last week we focused on the first pasuk of Shema. This week we're going to focus primarily on the last pasuk of Hayayim Shema. But in order to understand it, we've got to have the whole context of the whole chapter, because some of the comments are going to try to understand that last pasuk in the context of the whole chapter. So we're in Devarim Perek Yud Aleph, starting with pasuk Yud Gimel. And we have this parsha, as I said, we should be relatively familiar with it. It's part of Kriyat Shema. We say it twice daily. And it will be, if you will, again, we have this double word. Anytime we have a double word, double verb in Hebrew, it's for emphasis. Shamoa tishmiu. You will listen, is what it literally translates means. But it means if you really take heed, pay attention, and internalize et mitzvotai, el mitzvotai, to my mitzvot. Asher anochi mitzaveh etchem hayom. Now you'll notice here that again we are in first person. Hashem is speaking, even though this is Moshe's farewell address. It's not Moshe saying mitzvotai, my mitzvot. It's Hashem saying my mitzvot. Asher anochi mitzaveh etchem hayom, that I'm commanding you today. Now then again we switch. Li'ahavat, to love, and Hashem Elokechem. Hashem, your God, uli avdo, and to serve Him. So we're going from first person to second person to third person here. Now the interesting thing here is that if we think about Kriyat Shema, we have v'ahavtu et Hashem Elokecha v'chol levavcha v'chol nafshcha v'chol miyodecha. So the first thing that seems to be obvious here is the fact that we have a very close paraphrase of Kriyat Shema, with the word li'ahava, with the word Hashem, and the word levavcha of nafshcha, except in the plural instead of in the singular. We're missing b'chol modecha. You'll notice that. We're not going to probably address that tonight. I don't think any parshanim I have addressed that, but it's good. But it's a question. Why is it missing? Now, okay, so that's is if you, or when you will listen. Okay, because again, im can be if or can be when. So it's if you listen or when you listen. Now, if that's the case, Hashem says, I will give the rain in your land in its proper seasons. Yoreh u'malkosh. Yoreh u'malkosh are the two different types of rain, one at the beginning of the rainy season, one at the end of the rainy season. Those of us who are from North America know that there's no such thing as a rainy season and a non-rainy season. I'm not sure what the situation is in Africa or in the Isles. Okay, but in North America, there's no rainy season, and there's no rain can come at any time of the year and not come at any time of the year. In Israel, in our country, and here, there is a definite rainy season, a definite non-rainy season, and the rainy season is split into a generally an early rain and a late rain. And there's a difference between those. The early rain is a much more summer type rain. The late rain is a much more winter type rain. And that's when I say winter type, summer type, you can feel the difference in the temperature. You can even, I don't know about you, but I can even smell the difference between a summer rain and a winter rain. Okay, it's a different atmospheric feeling. But as a result of the rains, you will be able to gather in your, now dagan generally refers to grain. Tiroshcha refers to wine, grapes, wine. V'yitarecha refers to olives and oil. So again, you'll have abundant crops and everything will be fine. And Hashem says, I will give You'll have grass growing in the fields for your animals. V'yochalta, and you'll be able to eat v'savata and be satiated. And we're going to try to understand Rashi. We're going to go basically only through Rashi's explanation of what each of these different brachot pertain to. Now, Hishamru lachem, be very careful, guard yourself. Pen yiftel levavchem, that your heart should not be swayed. That's a good. There you go. Good translation. Thank you. Besartem, and you shall turn away worship other gods, and bow down to them. As a result of that, what will happen? The anger of Hashem will be against you. And he will hold back. Atzar is to keep something that should be released from being released. Okay, so it's to hold something back. Hashem will hold back the Shemayim, v'lo yiyematar. There will be no rain. V'adamah. And as a result of lack of rain, the land, lo titen et yivula, will not give forth its yield, its crops, its produce. And you will rapidly be destroyed from the beautiful good land Asher Hashem noten lachem, that Hashem is giving you. So this is a very two short psukim of encapsulating. Don't repeat the mistakes of the past. Don't learn from the people who've lived there before. Make sure you retain your allegiance to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which, as I said, is Moshe's theme throughout all of Sefer Devarim. Keep the faith, baby. Now, not only do you have to think about these words, the way you're going to engrave and etch and internalize all of this is you should put these words on your hearts and on your souls. And to make sure that you remember them, you do the following. They should be tied as a sign on your hands, which is the tefillin shel yad. We put tefillin on. And they should be as there's no translation for totafot. It's totafot. It's tefillin on your between your eyes. Even though we don't put it on our forehead between our eyes, it goes above. But again, based on the way the Parshanim understand this clearly refers to the fact that we have to take. This is one of the parashot that are written on the parchments inside those black boxes that we put on in our tefillin every day. By the way, in the original mitzvah of tefillin, the tefillin were worn from the time you got up in the morning till the sun set at night, and if you or until you went to bed, except when you went to the bathroom and were doing other things. However, over time that has become less the minhag because of the fact that when you are wearing the tefillin, you have to be concentrating on the fact that you're basically carrying a piece of God, a piece of parchment with Hashem's names. You're wearing it, and you have to be aware and treat it with the proper respect it deserves. And since we can't keep our brains from wandering as the generations have gone on, it's getting harder and harder to keep our brains focused for even the 10 minutes we're in shul. They have said that we shouldn't be wearing tefillin all day. Now, but in addition, it's not enough to just write these down and put them on as a sign that you wear. You have to teach them to your children to speak in them. In other words, not just you have to learn them, but you have to teach your children that this is part and parcel of who we are, of what what Judaism represents. And then when else should they be said? When you are sitting in your house, when you're walking on the way, when you lie down and when you rise up. Again, very reminiscent of Shema that we read last week. This concept of Shachov Kumecha, Blech Chavaderach, it's all similar to the Shema. Now, finally, we're told you also include them in that little parchment that you put on your doorposts, called what we call a mezuzah. And actually, mezuzah in Hebrew is really the doorpost. But we call the mezuzah that little piece of parchment that you put in the case and hang on the mezuzah of your door. Okay? So, but again, these should be written on the mezuzah of your houses and your gates. And finally, now again, remember, if you think about Shema, that's the end of the pasuk. Is the end of the Shema. But here we have another pasuk that's added. In order that your days shall be many, and the days of your children, on the land that Hashem has sworn to your ancestors, to give to them, as the days of the heavens on the earth. And we're going to try to understand that last pasuk as the parshanim do it. But first, before we do that, I want to briefly go through Rashi's comments on what are all these different blessings that will accrue. What is just an overview of the parsha from Rashi's perspective. So, firstly, Rashi tells us, wait a minute, V'haya begins with a vav, and it will be. What's the and connecting to? Rashi says very simple. Musav al ha'amur lamata. This is connected to the pasuk lamala, what the pasuk that comes shortly before it, verse Yud Aleph, where we are told that Eretz Yisrael is not like Egypt that we left. In Egypt, you wanted water, you went to the Nile, you went to one of the tributaries of the Nile, one of the irrigation canals off the Nile, and you had water. You could not expect it to rain in Egypt. If you were waiting for rain to fill up your cisterns, it wasn't going to happen. So the pasuk tells us that Eretz Yisrael is different. What? Because Limtar Hashamayim Tishtamayim. You want to drink water in Eretz Yisrael, it's from the rain. So Eretz Yisrael, unlike Egypt, completely contrary to Egypt and contrary to a lot of other places, does not have a lot of fresh water sources that are natural, that are recurring. They're very much dependent on rain. Like we have all these wadis that if it rains properly, they'll be full of water. If it doesn't, they won't. So Eretz Yisrael very dependent on rain. And again, the Parshanim tell us there's a reason for that, so that we will understand that everything here in Eretz Yisrael, we have to look to Hashem, we have to dive into Hashem if we want to keep our prosperity here. We're very, very much dependent on the nature and the conditions here. And that's why we have to be careful. Okay. Now, Rashi is very interesting. If you listen to the old, you listen to the new. And similarly, that's why Shamoah Tishmiu is why it's repeated. Rashi is saying that it's repeated. So we have to not only listen old but young or new, whatever. You have to listen to all of the mitzvot, not just the mitzvot that were given in Aseret Dibro, but even the ones that are given afterwards, and listen and observe. We're told if you'll forget the mitzvot or you'll forget Hashem. Again, it uses this double language of forgetting. Once you begin to forget, in other words, if you don't continuously review your commitment to Hashem, your learning of your Torah, your approach to how to practice Judaism, once you start forgetting, you'll forget everything. Again, because what happens is we start to forget, we start to get lax, and it's an avalanche. It's a snowball rolling downhill once we get started. And Rashi is saying the same thing can apply to listening. If we get, as a youth, we get into the habit of learning and reviewing, it will stay with us through our old age. Okay. That I'm commanding you today. These commandments aren't today. The day that Moshe is speaking is not today when we're saying this parsha. Why does that have the word hayom? Rashi says very interesting to teach us alechem chadoshim kilu shematim bo bayom. Torah should always be something that is fresh and new, as if we are hearing it for the first time, and there's an excitement about it, and we want to hear about it, we want to learn it. We should never say, Torah, that's passé, I learned it already, don't have to review it. So it always should, and that's exactly what the word hayom comes to teach us. Li'ahavu et Hashem, to love Hashem. Shelo tomar. One should not say when they're learning Torah, Harei ani lomed b'shil sheyashir. I'm going to learn because, hey, then I'll get a good job and I'll be rich and I'll be wealthy. And you read, hey, if Hashem says, if I follow all the mitzvah, I'll have all these good things. So that's why I want to learn. Oh, b'shvil shekra rav. I'll learn so everybody will respect me and they'll call me Rebbe and they'll call me, give me kavod. B'shvil shekabel schar. Or I want to learn so I'll get a great reward. Hashem will give me a reward. Ela kol ma sheta'asu asu me'ahava. The reason we do the mitzvot, that the ideal way we do the mitzvot. And Rashi, by the way, doesn't say that's not acceptable. It is acceptable because there's a whole Gemara that talks about this. But Rashi is saying that the ideal way to do mitzvot is me'ahava, from the love that we love Hashem. We want to do what He asks us to do. The self hakavod lavo. And maybe in the end, maybe you will get some kavod. People will call you Rav. Maybe you will make some money. Maybe you will get some mitzvah. But that shouldn't be your ulterior motive for learning. Because if it is, what will happen if you're poor? You won't learn. What will happen if people don't? You live in a place where nobody has any respect for Torah learning. You'll give it up. The reason we want to learn and grow in our Torah, in our Judaism, our relation with Hashem is because we want to have a relationship with Hashem. If things happen, but beneficially, if people respect us for that, wonderful. But that shouldn't be our ulterior motive in learning Torah. That's what Rashi says, Avodat Hashem. The purpose is to show our love for Hashem and to foster that relationship with Hashem. And how do we serve Hashem with all our hearts? Avodah shibalev. What kind of services with our hearts? The zuhi tefillah. This is referring to prayer. Shatfila karuya avodah, because prayer is also called service to Hashem. And again, it's the service that is done with our heart, with our emotion, rather than with our hands, and which like hands like putting on tefillin or other things that we do with our different parts of our body. Okay. Wait a minute. We just had this pasuk in Shema. Why do I need again? Ela azhara liyachid, azhara litzibur. Shema is telling every individual, and here it's communal responsibility. So this Vayayim Shemoah, even though as I said, it's complementary to Shema, and there's a lot of seeming overlap, but Rashi is telling us very clearly that the purpose of Vayayim Shemoah, and when Hashem says He's going to give rain and crops and whatever, and you'll be able to gather in your fields, that's not an individual blessing, and it's not an individual commandment. It's just collective. So if the whole Am Yisrael is serving Hashem, the whole Am Yisrael will get all these blessings. It doesn't matter if you individually are or not. You aren't going. It's not like the whole world is going to be cursed and you're going to be blessed. This is the collective. That's what Rashi is saying here. Okay, if you collectively follow and do what I've commanded you, I'll do my part. I'll make sure you got rain and you have crop. The purpose of this, by the way, is really not that we're not serving Hashem because we want, good, it'll rain. It's like, okay, go to the Hashem Kasper, let's do 10 mitzvot so we'll have rain. The point is, Hashem is saying, no, if you are living a life of Torah and mitzvot, I will ensure that the conditions are there to enable you to continue, so that you will have this prosperity, not because that's the reward and that's what why we're aiming for. It's because as a result of our doing the mitzvot, Hashem will want to create conditions so that we can continue to do more and more mitzvot. That's what Rashi is saying. I will do my part to enable you. In other words, once you start trying to do all the mitzvot, I, Hashem, will make sure that the conditions are right for you to continue doing mitzvot, that there won't be these distractions of, oh my gosh, we can't afford it, or we have all these things going on. Okay? Bito, when is the proper time for rain? The leilot shlo yatrichwetchem. At night, when everybody's sleeping, so it won't be a burden on you. You won't have to worry, I can't go out today, I can't do what I have to do, I can't run my errands because it's raining, or it's such a rainy day. Bito, that's the first comment. Second comment, not just nights, but Friday nights when everybody's home and celebrating with their family and enjoying a beautiful meal and then having a nice, good evening of relaxation. Nobody has to go out anywhere. That's the time it will rain. So again, all of these things are simply added brachot. It's not just that Hashem will provide the rain in the right time. It's a specific time when it will be least disruptive of your daily life, your daily routine, your being involved in Hashem's mitzvah. Okay, Yor and Malkosh are the two different things. We'll skip that. Okay, you will be able to gather in your crops. Okay, well, obviously, if the crops grow, you'll be able to gather them in. What is the specific bracha? Rashi says, "Atat asfenu al habayit v'lo oivecha." You will be privileged to be able to gather in your crops, and they won't be taken by an enemy in a war or capped or stolen by some enemy, which is very interesting because if we look in the Tochacha, one of the things that we have in the Tochacha is that all of our crops will be taken by our enemies. Okay, so again, Rashi saying that we see not just as a Tochacha, and we have to learn from that, but here also Hashem is giving us this special bracha that we will be able to enjoy the fruits of our labor. Hashem says, I'll give grass, there'll be grass on the field for your animals. Why is that? What's the bracha of that? You won't even have to go out in the far out of town to go seek pasturage for your animals. They'll have it right close to home. Davar acher, another interpretation. Tia gozes tfuatcha kol yimon hageshamim umashlis levehamtecha. You'll have so much, your crops will be so plentiful that you'll be collecting the crops the entire winter, the entire winter season. You'll be trimming your crops, pruning your crops, and that'll be enough to feed your animals, and it still won't affect in any way your harvest that comes out. Very nice. You'll eat, you'll be satisfied. It's another blessing Hashem is giving. What's that blessing? Even after you eat, there'll be a bracha on the food you've eaten, so that you'll feel satiated. You won't feel this pangs of hunger and need to eat more and more and more. All these wonderful blessings when im shamoa tishma, if or when you will listen. As I said, that's why I say it's if, when kind of im. However, yishamru lochem, okay? Kiven shetiyu ochlim usveim. Once you will eat and be satiated, yishamru lochem shelo teva'atu. Be very careful that you don't rebel. You don't kick in rebellion. Why? Shein adam morid rakadosh baruch hu mitoch tzviyah. The only time we rebel against Hashem is when we've got it all made. And we sit there, say back and say, I don't need Hashem anymore. We got $1 billion bucks in the bank. What do I need God for, right? And Hashem, again, Moshe is reminding us, human nature. When we're poor and we don't know where our next meal is coming from, oh, please, God, you got to help me, right? But when we got it made, oh, look what I accomplished. Look what I did. So Hashem, Moshe is warning us very carefully, do not fall into the trap of thinking that you don't need Hashem. Just because Hashem has blessed you and you have everything you need, don't rebel against Hashem. And how do we know that that is a likelihood? Again, we had it earlier in the parsha. Pentoch al v'savato, you'll eat, you'll be satiated with korach of its own chayir, and you'll have lots of cattle and sheep. Mal omer achrav, what does the next pasuk say? V'ram levavcha, you'll suddenly feel high and mighty, v'shachach with Hashem, and you'll forget Hashem. So again, Rashi is saying this two psukim is basically a paraphrase of what Moshe just told him 5 minutes ago, that's Aliyah Sheni, this is Aliyah Shishi. They're both in the same parsha. Again, this reinforcement of don't take your prosperity for granted. It's a gift from Hashem that can be Rahman Lo Aleinu can be taken away if you choose to rebel against Hashem. Don't. And again, remember, all of this is, as I said, we're leading up to this Kimei Asher Nishba Hashem Lavoteinu Lotet. Okay, this is all relating to living in Eretz Yisrael. Visartem, what will happen? How will we turn away from Hashem? Lifrosh minat Torah, to separate ourselves from the Torah. When we once we separate ourselves from the Torah and its values, the next step on the slippery slope down is you will serve other gods. If you leave the Torah, you're going to go and seek other value systems, other meaning in life, and you will find all sorts of crazy, ridiculous things people do to try to put meaning into their lives. And we have a proof that because David said, that by you driving you away from being part of Hashem's nation by worshiping other gods. And actually, it's very interesting. That pasuk is really about that when David had to leave Eretz Yisrael, to show that he felt that leaving Eretz Yisrael is similar to worshiping idols. Because if you live in Eretz Yisrael, you should be living in Eretz Yisrael, not going seeking other greener pastures. Since I'm not living in Eretz Yisrael and I can't be involved in Torah, I'm already one step closer to worshiping idols and turning away from God completely. So again, we have this reminder, very, very powerful reminder from Moshe Rabbeinu, be where it's very easy to forget Hashem, especially when things are going smoothly and everything is wonderful. Elohim Achirim. Why are idols called Elohim Achirim, literally other gods? Why? Rashi says, Shem Achirim li'ovdehem. They are other to those that worship them. What does that mean? Other? They are not available to be. They're not available to people who worship them in terms of what? Soik alav einenu oneu. You can cry out to your idol and he's never going to answer you. Nimtza asuilo kinachriga. So it appears that even though, quote, I love this idol and I wanted to worship him, he doesn't recognize me. It's as if Kiviyachol, he doesn't recognize me. That's why they're called Elohim Acherim, other gods, because they have no power to answer anybody. Okay. Even if, again, the Torah, that you will lose all of your produce, even if you think you plant it all and it's all going to grow, even if you plant a lot, Hashem says, if you're not following the Torah and the mitzvot, the crops won't come up. They will fall. They'll fall short of what you expect. And as a result of Adatem Mehira, you will be lost. Al Kol Shara Yisurim. After all these other things that will happen to you, Egla Etchem Mino Adama. You will be exiled from the land. Shegarmo Lachem Lachto. Because the land and the prosperity of the land was what caused you to sin. I'm going to take that away from you and throw you out. Mashal Melech, and he gives an example. Let's skip the example. But again, basically, he gives an example of somebody who acted inappropriately and got thrown out of where he was. And that's exactly what Shem is saying, that if you don't act appropriately in Eretz Yisrael, you will be thrown out. Mehira, very speedily. I'm not even going to give you an extension, Rashi says. Mehira, speedily, you'll be thrown out quickly. You're not even going to get an extension. But you'll say, wait a minute, even the generation of the Mabul, which was as wicked as it was, got an extension, a reprieve to do tshuva. Hashem gave them 120 years of warning before the flood. Why did the Dor Mabul get an extra 120 years before Hashem punished them? Because they didn't have good role models. Who were they going to learn from? They had to learn by themselves to do tshuva. You Jewish people have lots of positive role models. If you don't take them, you don't learn from the role models, you're going to get banished from Eretz Yisrael. And unfortunately, we see as happened in history. The Samtemet of Vorai. Now, this is one of my I find most fascinating Rashis in all of Chumash. The Samtemet of Vorai, you should place these words al lavavchem, al nafshem, ushartem liot al yedchem. That's what we say. Now, Rashi says a very interesting shot. Af li achar shetiglu. Even after you have been exiled from Eretz Yisrael, heyu mitzuyanim b'mitzvot. You should still try to excel in mitzvot. Hanichu tefillin, put on tefillin. Asu mezuzot, put mezuzot on your door. Today, why do we do mitzvot in chutz laaretz? Why do we do mitzvot? Well, we think it's a mitzvah. We should do it. Rashi says no. The whole reason we do mitzvot in chutz laaretz, today, kelo yihu lachem chadoshim tishetachzuru. When Hashem brings you back to Eretz Yisrael, they won't be, we don't know what's going on. We never did these mitzvot before. How do I know what to do? Okay, so it's very interesting. Rashi seems to imply that all of the mitzvot of the Torah are only applicable in Eretz Yisrael. You really aren't, when you do the mitzvah in Chul, that's just practice. That's just practice for when you get home to Eretz Yisrael. I've always found this to be one of the most fascinating Rashis in all of Chumash, because we grew up in Chutz La'aretz. We all grew up thinking, oh, we're doing mitzvot because we got to do mitzvot because they're commandments, right? Rashi seems to imply, no, the only reason we do mitzvot outside of Eretz Yisrael is because we have to be in practice when we get back home. The Chenu Omer and similarly brings a pasuk, set for yourself signs and practice. And okay, so the whole purpose when we're in Galut of doing mitzvot is so that they shouldn't be foreign to us when we get back to Eretz Yisrael. Very, very fascinating Rashi. As I said, I'm not sure that's the way everybody understands the Rashi, but that's the way I've always understood it. Okay, you're yes, yes, in Babel, yes, that's what they discussed. The Gemara goes through this, but I'm saying Rashi, as I said, seems to come very clear. I mean, by the way, I read this Rashi now. Again, I'm perfectly willing for somebody to come and tell me I totally misunderstood the Rashi. I'm fine. But the way I understand this Rashi, what he is saying is, Asu kedei shelo yiyu lachem chadoshim kishtachzu. The only reason we do mitzvot in chutz la'aretz is for practice when we get home. Okay? Not that doesn't have value, by the way. Again, if you go back to what Rashi's been saying, the whole theme that he's been developing, it makes sense. It might make some sense, because clearly he's saying that we have to, if we aren't keeping mitzvot, he just said, if we aren't keeping mitzvot to practice them, what's going to happen? We're going to end up worshiping Avodah Zarah. So clearly, he doesn't say anything about negative he doesn't say we have carte blanche to avoid all negative mitzvot in Chutz La'aretz. He just says that the positive commandments that we do in Chutz La'aretz seem to be as a educational tool, but as a reminder, as a practice, so that when we get home, we know how to do them, rather than that they are specific mitzvot to do. Now, again, there clearly are mitzvot that we don't do in Chutz La'aretz. They're only done in Eretz Yisrael, and primarily they relate to the land, to farmers. Those of us who grew up in urban areas and never knew what farmer was, never knew what farming was, don't understand most of those mitzvot, don't understand the nuances of them. But anyway, that's a whole different story. Okay, l'daber bam. What does it mean that we have to speak about all of these words of Torah? Misha shaben yodea l'daber. As soon as a child learns to speak, Torah tziva lanu Moshe. First thing a child should be learning is Torah tziva lanu Moshe. That is a Torah that Hashem commanded us through Moshe. Okay, lamud diburo. That he should learn to speak words of Torah from the beginning. This is why they say when a child begins to speak, Torah. You should speak to your child in Lashon Kodesh and teach him Torah. You don't do that just if you buried your kid, because you didn't give him the opportunity to learn about his Jewish heritage, which is the most important thing, should be the most important thing in his life. That's what it means, l'daber bam. They have to learn that their conversation it doesn't mean you sit down and learn Chumash and Rashi and then Gemara with them. It means you teach them Jewish values about Judaism, about what it's about. And that should be your speech shouldn't be about what movie is playing and what TV program is playing. It should be about, your focus should be about Jewish values and promoting those and teaching them to your children. Okay. Now we get to the last pasuk, which is the pasuk I really want to focus on. I'm running later than I thought going through all these Rashis. But anyway, what does that mean? In order that your days should be multiplied and the days of your children. Now Rashi says, came, if you did all of this stuff that we just talked about in this paragraph, yirbu, then you will have many days. Bim lav, but if not, lo yirbu, you won't have many days. Shedivrei Torah nidrashim miklal lav hein miklal hein lav, because the Torah works in both ways. If the Torah gives you something positive statement, the negative is the converse, and that's what Rashi is saying here. So it's l'man yibu. If you do, again, remember we start with im shema. When you listen, everything will be fine. When you don't, Torah doesn't say what will happen when you. Although we did have that little two pasuk interchange in the middle. But that's what Rashi is saying. Now, again, last Rashi here, very interesting. It says, Latate lahem, Hashem swore to avot to give to them, not to give to us, to give to the avot. Hashem swore to give Eretz Yisrael to the avot. Seems very strange. The avot lived thousands of years ago. They never had Eretz Yisrael as inheritance. Latate lachem ein ketiv kan. It doesn't say that Hashem swore to the avot that he's going to give the land to his descendants. Ela latate lahem, to give to them. Mikan nimtzeu lemeidim tchiyat hametim min haTorah. Rashi says this verse is proof of the concept of Tchiyat HaMeitim written in the Torah, because the Avot are ultimately going to come back to life and inherit portions in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, that's all Rashi, and now we're going to go into all of the other commentaries on this last pasuk to try to understand what is this. Firstly, what is the man Yirbu Yimechem Yimechem? Why Al Hadamar Sher Hashem Lokecha Notein Shishbal V'Techa, and the final phrase of Kimei Shemaim Al Oretz. What is that? So let's start with the Orach Chaim. First, he says, is Laman Yirbu. If remember, the pasuk immediately preceding this was Uchtavtam al mezuzot beitach visharecha. So Orach Chaim's question is, Lama lo timamar zeh kodem amar Uchtavtem. Why is this pasuk before Uchtavtam al mezuzot beitach visharecha, which should be the final pasuk, just like we had in Shema? Because this pasuk, by the way, is included in your mezuzah and it is included in your tefillin. But why isn't the Tavtem, which is the final culmination of all this, that you have to write it on the mezuzah, why isn't that the last pasuk? That Tavtam, you have to also write this pasuk of Laman Yirbu in your mezuzah, and which we do, as I said. And perhaps the Torah wants to put it in the opposite order to tell you that this Laman Yirbu Yimechem is not going on the whole parsha, it seems, but it seems to be going only on the mitzvah of mezuzah by the fact that it's after the taftama mezuzot. Our Chaim wants to say that the whole concept of arichut yamim is based on fulfilling the mitzvah of the mezuzah. Why? Because the mezuzah represents Hashem's protection over your house and what goes on in it. We don't often think of that. We think when we buy a house, okay, we put the mezuzah up, and then some people kiss it when they go out, are conscious of it. But the mezuzah is to remind us 24/7 of every time that we're in that house or in that building, that Hashem's presence is with us, and we have to act as though we're aware of Hashem's presence when we're doing that. And that's why the Rechaim wants to suggest, remember Ramzali quotes it from the Gemara in Shabbos, Kol hazoyer b'mitzvot mezuzah, marichin lo yamavu shnotav. That this arichut yamim is directly connected, not to this whole parsha, you got to keep all the mitzvot, but directly connected to the mitzvah of mezuzah, because mezuzah is our testimony. We talked about the ayin and daled last week of the Shema, which is also written in the mezuzah. You're testifying to the fact that we acknowledge Hashem, we are aware of Hashem in what we're doing. Hashem is the one who blessed us to have this building to be able to put the mezuzah on in the first place. And all of that really connects us back when every time we enter, we exit, every time we think about being in the house, we think about Hashem's presence. And that's why Arichut Yomim is connected specifically to the mitzvah of mezuzah as what we should be focusing our lives on. Okay. Chizkuni. Chizkuni, a very interesting short comment. It says very simply, Af nashim chayavot b'mezuzah. Women are also chayav. If a woman lives alone, she has to put a mezuzah on her house too. Okay. Why? Nishim de'inu nami boi chayav. Because they also want to have long life. They also want to have a long life, so they should also want to have the blessed mezuzah. Now, the question we have to ask that's underlying this kuni is we have to think about it. Why would we even have thought women are exempt from the mitzvah mezuzah? Very simply because mezuzah is connected to tefillin. Tefillin are only an obligation of the male because there are mitzvah aseshes mangrama. There are positive commandment that's time bound. We have to wear tefillin only during day and not at night. Not only on wait days, not on Shabbat. Therefore, they are timed a specific time to fulfill the obligation. Women are exempt from those types of mitzvot. We might have thought, since tefillin are compared to mezuzah, or mezuzah is compared to tefillin, just like women are exempt from tefillin, they might be exempt from mezuzah. Chizkuni says, no, don't think that, and here's the reason why. Here's the connection. Okay. Rashbam. Rashbam says the whole concept of Kimei HaShemayim Oler, this whole last bracha, Kilomar, is if to say, why Shemayim and Aretz? Why is like the days of the Shemayim al Aretz? To say because Mitati Matar mean Hashamayim. Kimei HaShemayim, what is the days of the heavens means that the water, the rain has to come from heaven. The bracha, part of the bracha is that Shem says, if everything goes okay, you will get your matar min hashamayim, and then the hadama or the aretz titenit yivula, everything will give its crop. That's why Hashem at the end of the parsha it mentions kimei hashamayim al haaretz, like days when the shemayim and the aretz are working in sync. The rain is coming, the crops are growing. Okay, Kleyakar. Kleyakar is a very interesting thought here. Okay. Remember, we're going to have a long life where? When we're living in Eretz Yisrael, then we can have long life for us. Okay? Masachet Bracha. He quotes more in Bracha. Amr Leila Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan, who lived in Eretz Yisrael, was told by some travelers from Bavel, Ika Save Bevavel. There are senior citizens in Bavel. Tama, he said, wow, that seems strange. How can there be senior citizens in Bavel? Baktiv, the pasuk says, when you have arichut yamim when you're on this land of Eretz Yisrael, mashma v'chutz laaretz lo. Seems to imply that wait a minute, you can't live to a ripe old age in chutz laaretz, only in Eretz Yisrael. Amrele. So they answered him. What did they answer him? This is Gemara by the way in Brachot. Heim makdimin umachshichin lebei kenishta. These people who are these senior citizens in Bavel, people get up every morning early and go to shul, and they stay late. They come late to shul, and they stay late in shul. So they're in Beit Knesset late, early and late all day. Amro hainu dahani leis. He says, that must be the merit that stood for them. The kashal terutzeh. So Kleyakar quotes this Gemara. Now he has a question. This question, that doesn't answer the question, so they go to shul. So what? They're involved in the midst of going to shul. So what? Shai b'pasuk zeh amar stam alo adama bilti shum chalukah. If you want to have a Richut Yom, you got to be in Eretz Yisrael. It's got to be in Eretz Yisrael. Where are you getting this idea that because you're in shul, that's who says, oh, people who don't go to shul and chutz la'aretz will not have a Richut Yomim? Doesn't say that. It says if you're in Eretz Yisrael and when you perform the mitzvah of Richut Yomim, so again, we get back to the same question. Like a very interesting answer. He's going to explain with another Mamar Chazal, which is with Gemara Megillah, that what Atidin Bate Knesiyot or Bate Midrash Shebechutz La'aretz Sheikbu Eretz Yisrael. Gemara tells us that all Beit Knesset and Beit Bate Midrash, places where people gather to learn Torah, to daven together, that are in Chutz La'aretz, that are outside Eretz Yisrael, ultimately in the La'atid Lavo, in the future time when the Geula comes, all of them will be reestablished in Eretz Yisrael. Whether the actual building will move or the organization will move or whatever, I don't know, whatever it happens, but they'll ultimately get back to Eretz Yisrael. They'll be established in Eretz Yisrael. The Imkain, therefore, Adama shebechol batei knesot shechutz la'aretz, zui admat shel Eretz Yisrael. So in reality, even though now they're temporarily located in Chutz La'aretz, they're really part of Eretz Yisrael. They're really connected to Eretz Yisrael. Shari'at dikba Shema v'teknei binyan v'hakarka mikol v'chol el Eretz Yisrael. Now, again, very interesting. He says not just are the organizations going to move, the buildings are going to be uprooted with the land under them, and all of that's going to move to Eretz Yisrael li'atid lavo. The Imkain, that's the case. If that land that the shul is built on is worthy enough to come to Eretz Yisrael, if Cain, Vali Adomi Admat Kodeshi, it's obviously something holy, V'chelik min Amat Eretz Yisrael. V'mashkin, v'mariv, v'chol yom, v'vatei knesiyot. Somebody who gets up early and stays late in the Beit Knesset or the Beit Midrash, Dome ki'ilu b'chol yom hu omeid al ha'adamah asher nishba Hashem la'avotam. It's as if he's standing in Eretz Yisrael, the land that Hashem has promised us. U'mekuyem bo, and therefore he will have established in him. Again, then he quotes this thing of he says, what is Rashi bringing in this whole Indian from the fact of Lachem? Ella, but he says this is connected. When will all these shuls and Beit Midrashim from Chutz La'aretz get to Eretz Yisrael? Only li'atid lavo. So therefore, that's when we see that this whole pasuk comes connected back together. Lavotecha latet lahem. Yachol liot shezeh musav al tchilat haparsha shenemar liavdo b'chol levavchem zu tefillah k'perish Rashi. Again, connected back to the beginning of the parsha where it says that this is referring to tefillah. The fact that it's b'chol levavchem with all your hearts, plural, says that we're talking about a group of people who are davening together. Where are they davening together? Obviously, the Beit Knesset. So obviously, this now ties the whole thing, the whole concept of L'man Yibur Yimechem being in Eretz Yisrael, because the shuls will all come back to Eretz Yisrael. Okay. All right, I'm going to leave the rest of this, even though it's only one more paragraph. Let's go quickly to Reinu B'chaya, just very shortly, because I'm running later than I expected, as usual. But okay, let's take this verse is to teach us the following: Ki Eretz Yisrael netuna Yisrael li'olam. Eretz Yisrael is the eternal gift of the Jewish people. Ki Mei Hashemayim al Haaretz, just like the days of heaven and earth. Shehem li'olam. That's why it says Ki Mei Hashemayim al Haaretz and connects it back to our inheriting Eretz Yisrael, our living in Eretz Yisrael. Why? How do we know that this land is only shayach to the Jewish people? Firstly, if they return, if they are exiled, they will ultimately return. But that's not the proof. The proof is the following: no other nation will ever be able to settle here and established themselves as a country here, except Israel. And if you study history, you will find that Eretz Yisrael has either been under Jewish rule or some foreign power, some foreign empire. Nobody has succeeded in ruling over, no nation other than Jews has succeeded since the time of Yeshua, has succeeded in being the ruler over Eretz Yisrael only, and making it grow and making it flourish and making a successful country here in Eretz Yisrael. So I think that's really, again, we've come full circle basically from the beginning where Hashem promises us all of these brachot, tells us that if we don't live up to our obligations, it's not a one-sided, it's not an unconditional contract. It's a conditional contract. There are conditions that we, the Jewish people, individually, as we read last week in Shema, and collectively, as we read this week in V'hayim Shemoah, have to adhere to, and we fail to adhere to them at our own peril of being thrown out. And when even though Hashem promises us that ultimately we will come back, when we come back, we still have the same requirements. We have to individually and collectively build and foster a land that is based on the values of the Torah. And if we fail to do that, we run the peril of once again being thrown out. We hope and pray that Hashem should give our leaders and all of us the vision and the realization that that's why we're here. We are here to build a Torah society, a society based on the values of the Torah, not on any other misunderstood or misplaced potential values. And when we understand that, when we are able to move the society forward to live according to those values, we are sure that we will merit to see the day when all those Batei Knesset, Batei Midrashot from Chutz La'aretz will come back. Thank you all. I open up now for questions, comments, and feedback. So if you have any questions or comments, now's the chance. Anybody? Okay. All right, nobody. Thank you all for joining and sharing, and have a great rest of the week. And Best John, we'll see you again next week, same time, same place. And turn off the recording.